So the first thing to do is to fold your fabric over like this. Then I'm using 11 inches for the wideness of this. And why I use 11 inches is because the armhole of this individual is 20, so divided by 2, that is 10, then 1 inch extra allowance, so that gives me 11. Now the length of this, which will be the sleeve length, is 24 inches, so I'll mark 24 inches here. Then I'll add 1 inch sewing allowance to that, so that will make it 25. So the length of this will be 25, which is the sleeve length of the individual. Now mark this into a straight line, and this line here is my wrist line. So the wrist of the individual I'm making this is 9 inch. Then I'll divide that into 2, which gives me 4.5. So I'll mark 4.5 here on this wrist line. Then I'll add 1 inch extra sewing allowance to that. Now on the top here, so this is 10 inch, which is the armhole of the individual. I'll mark it, and then the remaining 1 inch is for the extra sewing allowance. Then from the top here, I'll come down by 3 inches. I'll mark that 3 inches here. Then I'll divide this line, this 10 inch into 2, which gives me 5. So I'll mark that 5, which is the midpoint. I'll mark it, and then from that midpoint, I'll connect with a curve to that 10 inch mark, like this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect from that 5.5 inch on the wrist line to the 11 inch on this top line, like this. And I'm going to connect using a straight ruler like this. So once I've connected that, I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut out this sleeve. So once I cut this out, now I'm going to use my chalk. Then I'll connect that using my free hand. I'm going to carve out the armhole curve here on the sleeve. So I'm going to cut that out. Okay, so this is it. Now the next thing I'm going to do, which is very important, please always notch the midpoint of your sleeve. Very important. Now I'm done that. The next thing I'm going to be doing now is I want to cut out that overlap that is always on the sleeve, which is standard to a cassock. It must have an overlap just like this, which is what I want to cut out. So you're going to make sure that the overlap is the same wideness as your sleeve, just like the way you see that I'm doing right now in the video. So you can as well use your iron to press this down, because whenever you're making a cassock, please always make sure that you are ironing intermittently so that you can have a neat job there. So I'm going to put it on each other like this, and then for the measurement of this lap, you can use between 5 inch to 7 or 8 inches, all right, for the length of this overlap. Because this overlap, the highest it can get to is the elbow of the individual. So for this one, I am using 7 inch. So I've marked my 7 inch, and I'm going to form that into a straight line. So the highest length of this overlap on the individual is the elbow. It mustn't pass the elbow at all. So for this particular one, this is the length I want. It's not going to get to the elbow, and it's measurable. Okay, you can measure this on the individual as well. I'm going to mark this into a straight line just like this. So and this one that I'm making is going to stop at the midpoint of the sleeve. So I'm just going to cut this out just like this. Then I'll place my sleeve on it like this, and I'm going to cut out the same shape of my sleeve. So now please remember to notch the midpoint of the sleeve and the midpoint of this overlap. Very important. You're going to need it when you are sewing. So now the next thing is to sew this. So I'm going to place this overlap on, this is the right side of my fabric now. So I'm going to open it up to the wrong side, just like this. And then on the wrong side here, I'm going to place so I'm going to be placing this overlap on the wrong side. And this also is the wrong side of this overlap. This is the wrong side. Now making sure that both notches are facing each other, or they are on top of each other. I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch because I'm going to be stitching this together with 1/2 inch. So I'll make that into a straight line. And then I'll go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch down on this line. It must be on that line, it must be straight on that line. So I'm going to pin this down with my pins. So once I'm done stitching, the next thing I'm just going to make sure I do is I'm going to top stitch it on the sleeve. I'm going to top stitch this that joining on the sleeve. Okay, so let's use our pin to hold that. Let's assume that we've top stitched this. Let's hold this down with our pins. All right, so this is how it's going to look like. Then when you're done with this, you give it a good press and then you fold it over like this, making sure that the pointed edge is pointing here. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Now the next thing is you're going to fold this. If you want it to be straight, then you go over to fold this into a straight fold, just like this. But if you want it to be like a triangular shape, if you want the triangular shape, then you measure 2.5. You can measure 2.5, you can measure 3 inches, depending on how pointed you want that triangular shape to be. So for this, I came down by 2.5 inch on this side, 2.5 inch on this side also. Then I'm going to be folding on that 2.5 inch mark, just like this. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other side as well. So then I'll use my iron, I'll press this, all right, I'll give it a good press so that it can lay very well on the sleeve. So after I'm done ironing, then I'll pin this down with my pins. Then I'll go over to my sewing machine and stitch down at the edge. So after you stitch that down, then you can apply whatever trimmings or whatever embellishment you want to apply. So for this, let's assume that you want to apply trimmings to it. So you make sure that your trimmings also brings out that triangular shape. So if you want to make it single, you can go ahead to make it single. Then you stitch on the tip of the trimmings, on the both side of the trimmings, just like this. Then if you want, so I'll advise that because for me, I always attach an interface, the soft one, to this overlap, even before stitching to the main sleeve. All right, it gives that sleeve a kind of volume and it makes it stand. All right, so if you want to double trim it, you can as well go on to double it. You can do whatever design you want to do on this now. All right, so So the next thing, after we are done doing all of that, we've attached the trimmings, we've done everything, then you're now going to fold over like this. And you must make sure, if you really follow this method that I showed to you now, when you fold over your sleeve this way, it's going to be the same. Right, one side is not going to be longer than the other, it's going to be the same. Now I'm measuring 1 inch, which is the sewing allowance we added initially. So I'm measuring that 1 inch now. Then I'm going to connect this with a straight ruler. Then I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and stitch on this straight line. Guys, if you follow this method, I guarantee that the sleeve of your cassock will come out perfect, like standard. All right, it won't be too long, it won't be too whatever. So after you've joined this down, joined it like this, then you now connect that the top of the sleeve, you connect it to the main body, that is the main armhole of your cassock. And that is all about it. I hope you. So this is what I want to show you. You can see how I've already top stitched this, and I folded this triangle with my iron. First, you can see how it is. Then I told you about the interface, that I always attach my interface, because I'm doing this sleeve for the sake of the tutorial. If I want to make it for a client, I'm going to attach an interface to the overlap, the soft interface to the overlap, before attaching or before sewing it or before stitching it to the main sleeve. So you can see how you can see how straight the stitches are. So make sure that your stitches are straight, make sure your job is neat, make sure you iron intermittently, and you will have a perfect and a standard cassock sleeve. All right, so make sure that this pointing of this triangle is really giving that pointing effect. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. Please, if you find this helpful, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. And also, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please hit on the subscribe button, and do not forget to share to your friends, to your families. Bye.